Director Bradley, Director Brems,
Here.
Director Cardenas,
Here.
Director Daly,
Here.
Director Keegley, Director Litvak,
Here.
Director Olson, Director Peterson,
Here.
Director Prokopis,
Here.
Director Silvestrini,
Here.
Director Stevenson.
Here. Thank you. All right, first item we have is the UPD update from Sheriff.
Everybody. Just a little bit for update on the UPD side. We had a officer involved shooting last week. 3 of our officers were involved. All of them have been placed on leave. The individual that fired rounds at them is deceased because they shot back. But just wanted to let the board know that our officers are doing very well. We have a peer support team, and our commanders are checking on them. I spoke with them myself. All of them are doing well. It is under investigation. Salt Lake City's protocol team is investigating, as well as the district attorney's office. So we'll have more information, but these kind of cases take a long time. You may have seen it in the news. We responded to a domestic violence situation, and that was going to be probably one of the dangerous types of calls to go on, but their training kicked in and did what they had to do in these type of situations, but wanted to let the board know that. Anybody have any questions on it? I can't answer too many because it's under investigation, but we have not released the officers' names as well. To protect that as much as we possibly can. And then we have some resignations, I believe 5 total, is that correct? In the last couple of weeks. So people going to either the private sector or finding other jobs. I don't know if it's related to the split or not, or just private sector jobs that pay quite a bit too. I do know that we have many that could retire if they wanted to. So I anticipate we're going to see that continue. We are working diligently to try to hire. And we're still in that process, still doing interviews, still sending people through the police academy. Because it gets concerning after that many leave in such a short amount of time. So we are going to continue to work on that.
Sure. Are we doing exit interviews with those folks too?
I believe you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do. Some are truthful and others are a little bit guarded, but yeah, we do those. But the ones that are coming up, we have one of them is a retirement. Another one's working opportunity with another agency, and then one of those for personal reasons.
We have to break down on how many of those are sworn or civilian.
I was only referring to the sworn.
That was
So I don't think we've lost any civilians in the 2 weeks which we had last. So these are all sworn. But we do keep track of all that data. And maybe it'll be helpful at maybe the September board meeting. We can show the stats, how many sworn we have, how many civilian, how many we're losing, so we can kind of show the board. We're keeping track. And we can talk more about how we hire. Part of the problem is it's just a profession that people don't want to do anymore. And it's a real challenge to get people to apply. And then you tack on top of, rumors of this split, and that doesn't help either. So we knew it was going to create some problems for us, and we're trying to be as prepared as we possibly can. But we do know we have really good people who work for UPD, and when we call upon somebody to go work here or go work there, everybody's willing to make it happen. So not concerned about the public safety piece at this time.
You know how many current vacancies?
We were flush, I think we're down one. We're actually doing 2 background interviews right now today.
If you,
We hire laterals if we can. We haven't had too many laterals put in. But, you know, if we get that opportunity, we'll get one.
I can just say to other board members that I had an experience last week basically about we were giving a tour of our new precinct headquarters to quite a number of our officers, and in the course of that I got asked some questions about where we were as the organization, and I told them what I knew, that that appeared that all the cities and townships were hoping to stay together, and we had commitments from them, and that we were working on things, and that we're waiting for basic information from the county, which we expect to get after Labor Day. Anyway, all that stuff, I just got, I had officers thank me for that, and just, I think they're hungry for any kind of news, and I think some of us are reluctant to say more just because we don't know stuff, and I've been told enough before this about, why isn't there more progress or stuff like that? And I've just tried to explain how complicated this all is. But I think any efforts that board members can make to talk to the officers in our precincts, I think they appreciate that. Even if you don't have a lot to tell them, at least you're communicating, and even that is better than nothing. So.
And it is hard to say, what is being accomplished when they're kind of on hold in a sense, waiting, especially on the county side with the HR, they gave us a timeline, so they're not gone past their timeline. It's just trying to wait for that day to happen. It does create a little bit of problems. One thing as well that we've done is we have what's called the Merit Commission, and a lot of decisions that we make have to go through them. And so we're trying to make sure that those Merit Commission meetings get taken care of, and we can get policies approved. Sometimes that's a holdup as well, but they've been really good on both sides of the house. We have the Merit Commission. Our commissioners are the same people that they work for both UPD, Merit Commission, and the Sheriff's Office. And we are trying to communicate as much as possible. Our labor is too. It is just a challenge, though, when you don't have answers yet. Okay, then the other update, I don't think I'm going to wait until under Sheriff Peterson. He does have a presentation as well. But we did interviews for our on the sheriff's side, the chief, deputy, and the deputy chief, and we made those selections last week. And those selections are Chief Jason Ackerman and Lieutenant Van Emmerich from Magna, who we have offered positions to come over to the sheriff's office to help us build this new bureau. We are aware that it could create some impacts to the UPD. We'll be meeting today on that. We met last week as well, and trying to, have the least amount of impact, but knowing changes happening. And I just wanted to let you know who those individuals are, and that we're working together as a team to, try to figure this thing out. And it is a challenge, I can tell you that. It's a very difficult challenge because you have the new UPD 2.0, you have the new Law Enforcement Bureau, but I keep reminding everybody we have a UPD current, and we're trying to ensure that our operations here continue the best that we can. And I have full confidence because I have confidence in the people that we have. One of the things that we have done all along is we train people to take our spots when we can't be here. So there's quite a few people who could just step in and help. And that's what we're going to rely on with our folks in these type of things. And, there's going to be more of that. More pulling people over to the sheriff's side that will have an impact to the UPD.
What's the effective date of those fires? I mean, when will they stop working for you?
It's in September, but I don't remember. Well, I guess you would know.
September 10th.
Okay,
should be
September
fine.
10th.
Start.
Chief Jason Ackerman. And then Lieutenant Van Emmerich. He works out in Magnet, with Chief Craig.
So that's being done in concert with, say, Chief Dial. So.
Well,
there-
Chief Dial didn't select, but yes, he's very aware.
Okay, but. How, in terms of transitioning that piece, so that. In this case, in HR, we have a transition plan that Chief Dial's involved with, so we
Yes.
have as smooth a baton pass as is possible.
Chief Dial's involved in that, and so is Chief Mazur. So we met last Friday. We're going to talk about it again today and include Harry in the conversation. And, we have some good ideas of how we can continue on. Like I said, we're really good at training people to fill our shoes when it's needed. So we'll be having more discussion later today. Any other questions on that piece? That's all I have for the update. I'll just stay up here with Chief Mazur's presentation.
Yep, next up, we've got UPD reorganization update for Chief Master. Sure.
Are you a right-handed person?
So, Chief, I'm interested in knowing, what you guys, what you and Chief Dow talked about replacing Chief Ackerman. That's, to me, HR is an important position for us to have filled, as we move forward too, so.
Yeah,
I know that you haven't had time to position him like that.
yeah, I mean, keep in mind, this all kind of happened late Thursday, and I'll actually talk about it in my update a little bit. Okay. We're still kind of early in the process. We have some ideas. Quickly formalize those and move forward. But I'm happy for Chief Ackerman and Lieutenant Van Emmerich. They've been dear friends of mine forever. And I think, it kind of feels bad that they're leaving. But, that was their decision to look at developing their own careers, and I support that. UPD, we have a philosophy of, if you want to go to the sheriff's office, you want to go to another agency, if you want to go work at Maverick, if you want to go to Home Depot, we'll support you no matter what you decide to do, as long as you feel like it's best for you and your family. So this is a positive thing, but for those that are paying attention, this is also an opportunity for others in the department. We have a lot of great people to develop their own careers and fill in those positions. We've got good leaders here. We've got very capable folks that will fill these positions and do an excellent job. And, it's just kind of, it's how organizations work. People come, people go, but we're all replaceable. And we should be looking at succession planning and developing those, who are going to be the future to take our place. And so this is, in a lot of ways, it's positive things. Other people will have opportunities for promotion and transfers and other things like that. So I think it's a good thing. They're very capable people, and it's a good thing. Change is good. It's healthy. So I'll get back to you on that, Mayor. My question. Our last workshop was about a month ago. We made a lot of great progress. We've had a lot of good communication with stakeholders and groups internally and externally. I feel like we're moving forward in a really positive way. And we have made some progress, but some of the problems that you alluded to, Mayor, so strange is some of these unknowns. So we're trying to, despite that, trying to do what we can with what we know or what we can develop right now. And that's been working well. What I'm hoping to see is that With what we know and what we have, we can develop some contingencies and some hypothetical plans, and then when we get those knowns, we'll be able to move very quickly, pivot, when we get facts, when we get commitments and things like that. We'll have a lot of structure in place already, so it'll be very easy to move forward. It's kind of a little, another important development is we had our first interlocal meeting, or our first interlocal agreement meeting that many of you were a part of, to go through and review the draft. We got through a number of pages on that. We still have more to go on that. Harry's done a great job doing that. One thing that became apparent to me is when you're working on the interlocal agreement is that we've learned a lot of lessons over the history of UPD, and it's an excellent opportunity to take some of those lessons and implement them in the new interlocal and in some of the way that we're structuring the UPD and make the organization stronger and build it for the future. And that became really apparent in that meeting. So I thought that was a positive outcome there. We did have one reorganization team meeting and one command advisory meeting, and we went through that old chart that I showed you last meeting. There was 4 or 5 areas that probably need to go back to the drawing board on, and that's because there's some unknowns. But for the most part, that org chart started to really kind of solidify. I guess I should say there's parts of it that I think are going to be pretty accurate in terms of the future. There are pieces of it we probably need to go back and look at it again more creatively. And then there's other pieces of the puzzle that until we get those in order to build that org chart out the way we need, we can't do quite yet. Let me give you an example of that. Right now, fiscal's working on looking at the operations budget. And there's pieces of the operations budget that are going to decrease, and there may be some areas where it goes up. But until we kind of understand what the operations budget looks like, it affects how we build the org chart. We're going to have some additional monies to have some positions there, or we're going to have to take some things out. So that is in progress right now. Working on that operations budget, that's a really important piece that we're diving into. The facilities team has met a number of times and they've made some great progress. We had 2 meetings with our brokers. And a couple of weeks ago, for the first time, we went on a field trip with our brokers and they took us to a commercial property. It's about 4 minutes west of here. And that was very, very eye-opening for me. And I think for the rest of our work group there to go into this commercial space and like reimagine what this would look like in this new commercial space. And it was just eye-opening. I think there's a lot of potential there. Should that option need to be exercised? Now, keep in mind when we're talking about that, we have 4 different options in terms of facilities, whether we embed in precincts or unoccupied precinct, school or library or some other option like that. Or if we go for a commercial property, we're looking at all the contingencies. As soon as we can figure out how many bodies we have and get the org chart kind of locked down a little bit more, then we'll be able to figure out which is the best option for those facilities. But the commercial properties option has a huge amount of there's a lot that can be done there. Yeah, options. There's huge options there. It really was very eye-opening to do that. So I appreciate their work. They went through this building last week and took measurements, counted cubicles, and just tried to get an idea of the square footage that we need. We're passing that info to our brokers, and that's when that's going to really ramp up in terms of looking at our options there. I had a really good meeting with SWAT and K9 units to talk about the future, to talk about potential having some regional options there. The reason I met with SWAT K9 first is because I think those are 2 of the most logical and I call it low-hanging fruit. They're going to be really important, and I think that they came up with some really creative ideas. So we'll continue to work with them on what that looks like next year. Our fleet group has done great work. They have put together all the lists, all the vehicles for UPD. Which vehicles would be going to the sheriff's office, and which ones would be staying here. So we've got that information together. They completed it. They're just waiting to get direction for the next step. Harry and I will be meeting with the county to go through some of these assets. And I don't think that will be problematic. I don't think any issues are flagged there. I think that will move out. The sheriff and Chief Dow and myself had what I felt was pretty productive kind of strategic meeting last week to look at the future. And as the sheriff stated earlier, looking at the next iteration of UPD, looking at the sheriff's office, but also looking at, I myself, and I'll admit this, I've been kind of looking at like the end point, but really everyone needs to be looking at what's in the middle, because the decisions we make now will affect what happens in the future. So I felt like that was a really productive meeting. And, we talked about, how to make good decisions now. How to set the table now so that there can be good partnerships and working together in the future. It was the first time we've had that kind of strategic meeting. What really came out of that also is that, we have the UPD in the future, we have it now, we have the sheriff's office. All three of those groups, or all three of those areas, have a very symbiotic relationship. They all affect each other. So we're trying to be mindful of that, make sure we keep good operations and we don't have any interruptions of service. And I talked to Mayor Stevenson about the transition plan and going through that over the weekend. Had to make a number of changes on that. I'd like to present that here in the near future again with the new version that I put together. It's clear to me that when I created that plan, there was pieces of it that where I was making guesses that now that we have more data, more information, we've had to push some things back, push some things forward. Along with that, I would just want to plant the seed right now with the board, the July 1 date that we're shooting towards and working towards. I think that's a good date for certain pieces of this plan. And I won't speak for the sheriff's office because, they're going to do what they feel is best, but I would like to plant the seed with the board that maybe taking a more phased approach in certain things or certain areas is probably the wisest thing to do with the complexities of this. I think as we get more data, I'll bring that back to the board for further discussion. We have some specifics, but I just want to say right now, I want to plant that seed that we ought to think about. I'd rather do this right than do it quickly. Does that make sense? I think continuity of operations and making sure there's no lapses of public safety are going to be really important. That's part of the strategic meeting I just talked about that really became apparent in that meeting. So that I want to throw that out there for your consideration. Just kind of think about that. I'll bring you more specific information in the future. So that's my report. I don't know if anyone has any questions. We are making progress.
So my question, I guess, and I didn't give answers for this yet, but I'm interested in knowing what kind of assumptions that you're making or using in terms of separating the county assets from, or let's say what assets the county may be taking from the like vehicles or things like that. What kind of assumptions are we using? Are we looking at a departure formula?
Yeah, and certainly on Harry and I will be meeting with I think Ralph and Bridget, right? To look at some of those issues that were really early on in that process. The vehicles, again, low hanging fruit. Vehicles are easy to figure out. We know what the county pays for, we know what the UPD pays for. So, those vehicles that are countywide services and in the statutory services, we've got that list. And those vehicles will obviously go back to the sheriff's office. In terms of some of the more minutiae detail, we haven't gone that far yet. Again, because of the unknowns we have right now, we're just trying to say, hey, that's a known. Let's attack that, get that fixed, or get that handled, and then we'll move on to the next now. And as we get more information, we're gonna be able to move even quicker. So, I mean, vehicles is the really easy one. Some of the other assets and things like that that's down the road.
And then, in terms of phased approach of a separation, I mean, I'm open to discussing that. I mean, I recognize that might be, maybe value in that. The other thing, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk about, but it occurred, we've talked about this in some of our meetings with the townships. I mean, I say that, you know, the meeting, starting to meet with Copperton, but have you had discussions about what kind of interlocal arrangements we may be able to strike with the sheriff's office or the county with respect to you know, sharing things? Like, it occurs to me that there'll be some things that the sheriff's office will want to work with UPD on, like maybe SWAT or K9, and things that we may want to work with the sheriff's office on, mental health or the gang task force, the DEA task force, things like that.
We've had very
discussions
informal-
about that.
Yeah, we've had very informal discussions. They've been very positive. When I told you about the SWAT K9, that was some of the discussions. Think big, think regional, think differently about how we've done business. And again, SWAT's such an obvious one. There's so many tactical groups around the nation that join together and do that from a regional perspective, because it's more efficient, it's more effective, it's safer. So we've had some very informal discussions on that, and that will be developed down the road. But to me, you know, getting this Lisa question answered and kind of understanding, okay, here's personnel you have. Well, once we formalize that, I think we can really move forward with some good planning. But my perspective on that is, and I don't want to speak for the sheriff, please, if you want to say something, but there's real openness to some partnerships, and not just even with the sheriff's office, but some other entities come together and creating some of these services that are regional, that will still give people some say in how they do it, but will save a lot of money.
I'm encouraged to hear that, because it occurs to me, I mean, we'll talk about this, and frankly, you know, our immediate goal is not to expand UPD, but I mean, I know our officers would like to see that happen. There's advantages to expanding the model. I think that it's going to be easier to expand the model with contracts for services to get people, get their feet in the door. And there are reasons to do that, even if folks don't want to throw in all the UPD, but I think I can see another municipality having some qualms about throwing in with UPD, lock, stock, and barrel right away or something like that. But there may be an evolution that could occur if we have an interlocal arrangement for some services that we provide, that we'd be able to provide better. So I'm glad to hear that we're talking.
Yeah, if you look at the construct for our team right now, you know, we have South Salt Lake participates, Unified Fire Authority participates, CPD participates. You have any comments on that?
Yeah, we have had several conversations about, is there a way to continue providing a great service that we provide with the split? How do we work together to find different areas of policing that we can continue to share and consolidate? But it may be, you know, people contract with the county for one thing, maybe, you know, another agency contracts with the UPD for another service, but we are looking at that because we know that makes sense. That's how you bring those costs down for everybody. We just have to make sure that it's appealing for other agencies, because I don't know whether or not, you know, it's going to work with just the two agencies working together, but I do think it's possible, and we're open to working together, and that's why we meet so regular, to make sure that we have this good relationship between all of us, because our goal is to provide the best service that we can. And you know, we even discussed Friday, is it possible for, or beneficial to UPD if we do it in increments, like, you know, we know what's countywide, we know what's statutory already. Would it be helpful to slowly pull those units out versus everybody at once? Because it does have an impact on our operations currently, and it has an impact on that day of the actual split. So, you know, that's something that I've asked Harry to take a look at. Is there a way that we can work that out so the impact isn't so much? We did it a couple of years ago when we pulled our civil unit out of UPD and back to the sheriff's office, and it couldn't even noticed, you know, and that's something that we're thinking about is, can we slowly do that? Then the impact won't be so significant, and it also helps us with planning. We know what to plan out, and you know how many people are going, what people are going, and it's a little bit slower as far as planning it out, but we think that might help the current UPD and the UPD 2.0. Those are just conversations that we're having. You know, the biggest challenge is not knowing who's going where, and we've talked about that month. So at some point, Slovisa has to make a decision one way or the other, and I totally understand they can't do that without the numbers. So we're coming up on September. You know, the goal is to have some type of pay plans and things in place on the sheriff's side, but that also impacts the UPD 2.0 too. As you shrink down, we have to be able to predict how many officers are going to be part of UPD 2.0, and does that impact their, you know, health benefits, or you know, the goal would be to keep them in that same pay range, but does it impact? So those are things that we're talking about all the time. I mean, you know, we have a lot of meetings trying to brainstorm and throw out anything that we see that could be an issue. But you know, I would like to get your opinion on, would you be even open to a slow transition where we slowly take, you know, a statutory duty back slowly, you know, like in the first of the year, the next month, and so that way it's a smoother transition. But if you're not even open to it, I you know, we don't want to spend our time working on that.
I'm open to it. I want to consider it, but I want to know more about it. I mean, I can't give you an answer about it today.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it on your radar.
And if it's anything like this announcement today, where we get 2 weeks notice, if we get 2 weeks notice that you're taking 60 officers with you, that's unsustainable, right? We have no choice, I think, but to look at a phased model for sustainability.
Well, this phased approach is something that's just come up recently, because the deeper we dive into this complex problem, you know, when I sat down and had a discussion with Captain Andrew Reardon about tech stuff, and that was kind of eye-opening in terms of some of the things that need to be done there that are important with IT and some of these other things. And then taking that even into operations, the strategic meeting we had, and started discussing the canyons. What does that look like? How do we transition that out? Because, you know, we don't know how many people are going to be there, and what levels of experience they're going to have. And, you know, what on July 2nd, you have search and rescue, and you've got some people up there that, you know, have never done that. That's, you know, so we started talking about kind of these hypotheticals. So to your point, Mayor Silvestrini, yeah, just planting the seed, but let's collect some more details, some more information on that, so we can come do a more comprehensive presentation to all of you. Because again, I think some areas, July 1, no problem. There's some places where we may want to have phased approach. Just want to plant that seed. We'll get you more detail so that you can make a good decision.
Yeah, I've been kind of pushing that July 1st date, because I'm just worried about the vacuum that's created and the uncertainty. And as further that goes along, I think the more damaging it is to probably mostly UPD 2.0. But after I said that, and the realities of that transition started to unfold in terms of, let's say, funding and how the revenue piece of the new model and how that might work and the timelines associated with that started to make even a July 1st. It's a little bit unrealistic. So I kind of get that. So I'm open to a phase piece too. The most important thing to me is communicating as soon as we possibly can what the end organizational structure is going to look like for UPD. This is what we're working towards. These are the challenges, boxes we're trying to check as we go, and continue to communicate that to our officers. That's more important to me maybe than the July 1st piece. But the longer this goes on about what the pay structure is going to be for the county, the longer that drags on, the more damaging it is. And so that to me is the most important thing is communicating to people where we think this is going from the sheriff's standpoint and the UPD standpoint, so they know what the end game is, and then communicating to them all the way along the issues we're trying to solve as we go and in what order they're going to be solved. As long as we keep communicating that, I think we'll be fine if we have to drag out beyond that July 1st date. Rather.
I appreciate that. If you ask me what's probably the most important question that needs to be answered right now, which member entities are going to UPD 2.0 and who's going to the sheriff's office? That is a big question. Because once we get that answered, that's going to set off a chain reaction of decision making, and planning, and all sorts of things that would be a good thing. It'd be a good thing for both sides of the house.
So do we think that the meeting with the county in early September is going to provide us enough information that that's going to become clarified and we'll be able to make those people that are involved will be able to make those decisions in a pretty short period of time? Is there an opinion on that?
I don't know.
I think part of the challenge is, and if I were a township, I would want to know what is the cost? What's the cost for the service? Well, we haven't provided any costs for the service yet because we're waiting for that information to get it right the first time. So in September, we'll know wages, we'll know, fair amount of cost, but what we've said on the sheriff's side all along, we know we're taking statutory duties and countywide services July 1. That's always been said. What we don't know is, will we have a contract model set ready to go to give the townships an opportunity to make a decision one way or the other, or will UPD 2.0 have a model of a contract or an interlocal to give you the full cost of what it would cost for either or? We have not even planned out a contract model at this point. We're working on statutory duties and countywide services first, because that's what we committed to for July 1st. And that's what we're looking at. So I think it is challenging to not know what the townships are doing, but it's also understandable that they have to do what's best for each township. And until they know those numbers, and Slovisa knows their numbers and what's going to happen with Slovisa, that's a challenge. I hope it is resolved in September because it has everybody just waiting to hear what is Slovisa going to do.
So the question that I always pointed to, I'm hoping that maybe we could have a time of when we'll get that answer, is what exactly is going to happen with the funding of Slovisa in regards to Kennecott. That is the key point with whether Slovisa is going to be sustainable or not. And I need to know, what is the date on that? Because until we have that answer, it's hard for Slovisa members to make a decision, because that's 40% of their budget. So, if the attorneys can't agree on what the law means, Or if the sheriffs or UPD can't get that, then where do we go and who is going to help us make that decision? Is that the district attorney? And are we communicating with them to get more clarity on that huge issue?
But the thing about this too, I've said this before, but I think the idea of who's going to provide the lowest cost is a false thing to chase. Police services are going to cost what they cost now for all of us. They may go up by a moderate percentage. We talked about 6%. They aren't going to go up more than that because we can't afford more than that. So whatever has to be designed by, it doesn't matter if UPD or the sheriff, is going to be within that budget. The question is really more is what do you get for that as opposed. But I think like we're not going to get into a bidding war because it isn't, we're going to pay for police services what we pay for police services. We're not going to, there's no magic fairy that's going to say you get better service than what we're getting now for less money. That isn't going to happen because we know the costs are basically fixed in terms of the salaries and things like that. So really it's which agency would you prefer to be a part of? And the more robust agency is going to be able to provide a broader scope of services no matter what. That's bottom line.
I just want to add on that I think so Srini's spot on, and it's more about service level. That Mass can come back and say, and give Midvale a 0% increase. You can also come back and give us a 10% increase, but we get to decide within there, what are we willing to pay for? What does the service level look like? And so as we talk about just what it's going to cost, I think it's more important, what service level are you looking for? Because that's going to determine the cost of either organization.
You're 100% right.
And it's something that as we have these meetings with the townships, is what we're trying to lock down where commitments are at, so we can give MAS and the sheriff's office clear direction on this. I know that everybody's looking for these cost comparisons, but again, just as Srini said, I think that we've got to think about service levels instead.
I got a question for Chief Mass. I keep hearing this uncertainty among the townships. I was at a meeting earlier this month and the 5 largest entities in UPD, I left there feeling very committed that we were all together. I know there was a couple meetings with the smaller townships that were yet to take place. But what is causing the uncertainty when the 5 largest members have told you in a meeting that I'm wondering where that's coming from?
So there's some of the smaller entities are still yet to be met with. And until they make a decision, that defines your personnel, which defines your ops budget, which defines your facilities, how much space we need. So until there's, the interlocal still hasn't been, completely reviewed, and when the interlocal gets signed, that's when we really have it locked in. And whoever does that, or when there's a contract signed with the county, then you're locked in, what's what. But even these, the smaller precincts, or not precincts, smaller townships, they have an impact on the budget and your personnel and your operations. And some of those have yet to even make any kind of statement of position. So, I think the whole thing is developing, but it's just not quite there yet. We start to make some really solid decisions and have solid.
Do you have a timeline on those meetings? With the smaller townships?
The only one that is meeting is Copperton, which is coming up this week, right?
No, theirs is not. We could not get them scheduled until the end of September.
Okay, so and see where we are. Right, and Copperton we haven't talked to, but I have a feeling that they are interested in see what they can do with another agency. Everybody else wants to be in UPD, but there are some questions about affordability, I guess. It's simply said, but Brighton's indicated, and Richie Canyon is indicated, although you guys are still a little bit up in the air, I think, but they'd rather be with you. They haven't committed. They haven't gone to their councils and had a vote about it. So they haven't committed. White City wants to be with you.
Is Lovisa looking at one point I had heard that internal policy in Lovisa needs to change for it to contract with multiple different entities. We know as Lovisa started that work, I'm looking.
Yeah, I don't know. We asked that question of Rachel last meeting and how did she respond? That was an option that they could go wherever they chose to get services from, I think.
Yeah, I think that was her opinion, is that it can be done. But again, she is the one that sent me an email asking me to do a contract model for Slovisa as a whole. So that's why there's some question of, okay, we get that official email and request, and then you guys meet and yours is like an official, yeah, the 5 are going. But that's what is creating this
And that happened, that
uncertainty
email came from her after our meeting.
before the meeting, before the last meeting. I don't have the exact date on that.
The 3 cities, Kearns and Magna meeting. If Rachel sent that email after that meeting.
Well, I don't know when that meeting occurred, so I don't know. I can look at the date of that, but I think that's what creates some, questions there. And then again, I guess we just need some kind of official decision on what, is happening with Slovisa funding. Because that would make it a lot easier. I mean, if he knew it's a 5, would you call it the big 5? He knew he was only planning for the big 5, that then he could move forward with. But not the unknown. On that funding piece.
Everything that our group is doing is looking at the UPD as it stands now, making that plan, and then as we move forward and decisions are made, if we've got to pull something out, we could do that. It'll be really easy to do that when we build it out when it stands now. If everybody decides to stay UPD 2.0, great. Some of those sheriff's officers pull that out.
So it would be super nice if each of our councils adopted a resolution about where they wanted to go. And it would be super nice if legal counsel for Slovisa would give an opinion about the ability to fund multiple agencies from the property tax that it collects. And it would be super nice if Salt Lake County would commit, as Mayor Wilson did in an oral conversation with us, to basically leave the Slovisa funding alone until the dust settles, at least, not permanently, but at least until the dust settles on that. Those actions would give our command staff some certainty about how to proceed. And I just think we need to move to that. And like I said, I think that in our discussion that the meeting that we had with Magna and Kearns, that what we talked about in terms of the police is going to cost, what police is going to cost, that was persuasive, and it tilted Kearns over into, okay, we're staying with UPD. I think that's the kind of progress that we can do. And rather than waiting to hear from these guys, maybe we need to do some stuff on our side to give some certainty about that, if that's possible to do. And I know that there are a lot of moving pieces to that, but it'd be nice to get there, I think.
Mayor, could I address one issue? Just in terms of the interlocal update, we had our first meeting and it was a great meeting in terms of having people give input into what was the first draft. And we saw some great suggestions. One of the issues that came up, and one of the more difficult issues that we're going to face in the interlocal, is one regarding what do we do about precinct budget silos. And the reason why it's a difficult question is one of the things we've had is a little problem with it sort of shortchanging our overall fund balance. And the question that came up is, do we define it and put it in the new interlocal? And if we do that, do we also put a cap in there? So it's a percentage of your budget or whatever that is. And that's going to be probably the thing that will slow down finalizing the interlocal. So I bring it up now so you can be thinking about it before our next meeting, because we are going to be discussing that. The rest of the interlocal literally could be done in essentially a short order, with the exception of how we deal with that. And that's really, as far as staff, we can come up with recommendations on a cap. We discussed, do we need a cap on it? And what happens if you go over the cap to the money that that's in your precinct silo? And it's a complex question because we've only had these precinct silos for a few years. Well, I would say that we may not want to put it in the interlocal. We may want to leave it to as a budgeting decision. But anyway, that's the thing that is, as we look at a new UPD, will be probably, in my opinion, the biggest challenge in finalizing the interlocals. What do we do about precinct budget silos and about precinct fund balance? I mean, and about organizational fund balance going forward. So I don't have a recommendation yet. We're still talking about some possible recommendations there, but that's really, I would say, the toughest issue facing us in the interlocal drafting. The other issues that were raised were just very good suggestions about what to include, what not to include in it. And that's probably the big question mark, because it first came up in the interlocal meeting, and it's something we're going to have to deal with moving forward. So I want to put that on your radar. We're going to talk about it at the next meeting, maybe talk about it at the finance committee meeting as well. But aside from that, I think there was a good general consensus on the suggestions made as incorporating them and probably not being problematic.
Yeah, well, just to reemphasize, I kind of switched positions on this in terms of how the interlocal would be moved through the process in terms of getting to a draft to our councils. And I think we decided at the last meeting that we would involve our legal counsels and city managers as we start to work through these issues, so that when we get to a final draft for the board, we think it's really been pretty well vetted out. And then when it gets to the councils, we can get it. I would love to work on a timeline of, say, March, to get it voted on by all the members that are going to join UPD 2.0. But as it relates to the fund balance issue, I just would want to understand why how we can justify building fund balance inside of our precincts. What's the justification of that? I think there might even be some legal issues with that, because I don't even know if we can, anybody else can tell me different. It's kind of outside the legislative parameters of what is a proper fund balance, because I don't think we report that in our financials. So that would be a question for me. I know that in UFA, we kind of work on a policy level of 8.5%, which is 3.5% above 5% minimum. Just as kind of giving us a little bit of fudge, but also with the philosophy that there's no justification to build fund balance within Unified Fire either, because they're just a service providing agency. So I would love, unless anybody's like objects to it and to move this along, could we just use, say, the 8.5% policy issue inside of the shared services fund balance, and the same thing inside a precinct, that we don't want your precinct fund balance to go above 8.5% as a target. If you want to change it, fine. And when it does, you can either ask for that money to be returned back to your city at the end of the year, or you can use it as a credit against your contract fee for the next year, whatever you want. It's your money. You want it back, you can have it, or you can use it as a credit against whatever your budgeted figure is for the next year. Just as I'll just throw that out there as a start point so we can move this along.
I think that's an excellent idea, for all the reasons that you've stated. And I think that I'm not aware about any kind of prescription by the state of maintaining a fund balance in an interlocal agency, but I'm sure that the auditor would have concerns about that, and there'd be a question about how that affects our municipal fund balance. And if you're already at this close to the 35%, that puts you over that. So I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, and just to add to it, I think it's also dangerous to allow members to build purposely build fund balance inside the precinct anyway, for obvious reasons. So anyway,
We've seen that.
that would be something I would just propose as a policy that maybe the UPD board would want to consider in terms of what our targeted fund balance is and what we're gonna do. I think in UFA, whatever's above that 8.5% is credited back to the members, isn't it, in the next year's? When you go through the budget, it's like, here's the fund balance credit, so. But inside your precinct, if you want the money back, I guess you could just ask for a check to be written, or, I mean, for holiday, I think what we do is say, whatever, when we get through the budgeted process, whatever is above that 8.5% of the precinct, we want credited back to reduce our annual fee for the next year.
Yeah, and some of us have done things like that.
Sure.
But I think it's appropriate that we have some guardrails on that. And the numbers you suggest, unless command staff thinks that 8.5% is a goal or whatever is not the right number. I'm
Yeah, totally open to that. I just thought it'd be a good start point.
Mayor, is that 8.5% in the UFA interlocal, or is that a board?
It's a policy. It's just a policy.
Policy.
Also think I'm comfortable with that, and that was something that we implemented not that long ago to say, if you go over, set a cap, and if you go over, just be able to write a check back, and keeping with that same system. Just one thing, I don't have strong feelings on 8.5 or exact percent. I know that when we ran into the shared services fund balance issue earlier this year, it was very helpful for Midvale that we had fund balance that we could just pull from our precinct and use that. And so hopefully we don't ever get into one of those situations again, but if we do, I know that was an area where we were thankful that we had that built up.
Yeah, and I'm happy, maybe the best suggestion is to refer it to the finance committee for kind of debate and then bring it back to the board, but use that as a start point, and then they can debate it inside the finance committee and bring it back as a policy to the board.
I also think that we've kind of changed the way we were using fund balance, so that we shouldn't have the same kinds of issues that we had with that fund, with our fund balance going down. I mean, we did feel that. Changes, but I think we've changed how we're dealing with budgeted use of fund balance.
Only other thing, if you're good, Harry, on that I want to add in, it was brought up, jumping back a little bit, but it was brought up the cars being designated out. I would ask is that if that differs from our departure formula at all, that the boards be involved in that, in those conversations. So I know that it sounded like that had not been determined yet, but again, it's different than.
Mayor, if I could, the discussions on any departure are preliminary before the board makes a decision. You know, nothing can be finalized without board approval of transfer of assets. So this is the Salt Lake County issue will be governed by the departure formula that we currently have with its assets and liabilities and the formula that was passed. There's not a new formula for this departure. It's simply what we have in place and what exists. And so when we look at this, you know, I think we would probably treat this as we have treated other departures and bring forth perhaps incremental ideas or reserving other issues for a later determination. But we wouldn't transfer assets to Salt Lake County without the board.
Yeah, it won't be any different than the past. I'm just letting you know that's progress.
Sheriff, would you agree with that on the county side and sheriff's side?
You know, I would probably need our legal to get an opinion there, because technically we're being forced out by legislation. So I don't know how that applies to.
As in, all of our legal counsel agreed this legislation doesn't actually make us do anything at this point. We're following
I
intent,
heard that.
but I believe that was stated.
So, but does that mean you're still being forced out? I don't know, but I'm not the person that should answer that question. So I do think that we can work this out. You know, the way we're looking at it is to treat Salt Lake County like we have every other partner. But I don't know. I don't know those answers. I mean, you know, it's going to take Salt Lake County to give an opinion on that.
Well, I'm just gonna say that for legal counsel for the county who's here, if the county doesn't withdraw, then from UPD, then we still have a lease here. So, these are the things that need to be taken into consideration, the legal steps. So it is a matter for some lawyers to give some advice.
And that's precisely why we will be meeting with Under Sheriff Peterson, Maz, and Harry in the next little bit.
There is a term that I've been thinking about that I would call by operational law. As an interlocal, and this also goes forward with who will be a member of the UPD. In order to be a member of an interlocal, you need to both receive services from it and pay money into them. Otherwise, there's no basis for a membership if you're not receiving services and not participating in its governance. So with that question, whether it's considered a removal or a departure or anything else, if we're not going to be providing services to Salt Lake County and they're not receiving benefit from the UPD in terms of that and being involved in budget, finance, governance, it's really what I would call a departure simply by operation of law. So we can't have Sandy be a member of the UPD when they're receiving no services other than perhaps tangential participation, like if they're on a car team with us or they're, things like this. It's the purpose of an interlocal is to share obligations and budget issues. So just I think that getting caught up in the semantics of being removed or departing voluntarily is sort of a side issue that I don't even know if we need to answer. What we know is that there's been a determination because of legislation that we're not going to be providing services to Salt Lake County and they're not going to be paying money to UPD. For that reason, it's you really can't be a member of an organization that you have no stake in. It would go the same way with future members of the townships. If there are townships that choose to contract with Salt Lake County for their services, then we're not going to be providing services and getting paid for those services. So at that point, I've drafted an interlocal that includes everybody, but at some point, if some townships decide to go with Salt Lake County, that's fine, but they wouldn't be a member of the UPD going forward because we're not engaged in providing services and there wouldn't be a role in governance for them as a board member or as a member of the organization. So I don't, the word membership by operation of law isn't in there, but I think fundamentally to the core of the Interlocal Act, it requires that combination of sharing of services and obligations that we don't have if somebody is not receiving services and paying for those services to the UPD. And I'm not talking about sharing things by contract, which we can do. That's different because we can contract with whoever we want, but to actually be involved in budget governance and everything else we do, that requires more than simply sharing a SWAT team or sharing even a property and evidence or something else. So when we look at those discussions, it's kind of like if there's an agreed upon date that Salt Lake County is going to be going out on its own, that's probably the date that it is no longer a member of UPD. And I know we can get hung up on who's departing and whether they gave notice and what, but I really think that whenever we're not providing services anymore and they're not involved in our budget and governance, it's probably the time period that they've departed, regardless of whose choice it is. The choice has been made for us eventually, we know that. The question is simply the formality of us trying to decide what that is. And we'll, as we talk about things with Salt Lake County, and we're just starting that process, that'll firm up. But right now, the departure discussion is about county funded and county in terms of countywide and in terms of statutory duties that we know we're going to be moving with the sheriff. That's what we're talking about in terms of what do we do about seeing that they get their proportionate share of assets, the liability question is up in the air. We'll deal with that when we know more. But in terms of interim transfer, we know how many vehicles are assigned to candidates. We know how many vehicles are attributed to unincorporated areas. These are the types of things, maybe to county funded task forces. So we're gonna go down that list and meet with the county and talk about that. And then propose something to the board so that the county knows what vehicles it can get now, and in case it needs to buy more, they've got time to do that. You know, ultimately, at some point, it's beneficial for a proportionate number of officers to go to the county rather than stay behind. So I congratulate Ackerman and Van Emmerich on their appointments. Those are, you know, ultimately in order to right size the organization, that has to happen too. So we do need to kind of approach this on a dual stage of, we have a departing member, regardless of how we call it, that needs to be given their fair share of our assets. And we have an organization that we're looking at that right now we're planning on all members of Slovisa being a part of. But if members of Slovisa contract with the county or do something different, then that's fine. But they're not going to be a member of the UPD if they do that, even though they're still a member of Slovisa. So I hope that kind of outlines what we're looking at from a legal perspective.
So, Harry, so how does that apply, what you've been saying about the interlocal? You have to have the services and the revenue. Okay, so how does that apply with Slovisa and with the county being a member of Slovisa?
Well, Slovisa is a funding arm that collects taxes and then spends its money as it deems, as its board deems it appropriate. Other than that, I think that you would need to obtain the advice of the Slovisa attorney on that and member attorneys representing townships. What I just would tell you is this, that Slovisa can function separately from the UPD. It's my opinion they can contract with whoever best serves the members of Slovisa. I don't think UPD has a basis to say you're locked in here. However, I do think that in the end, the purpose of Slovisa is to fund law enforcement services within its service area. And it's for us, we just need to know how much we're going to be paid so we can budget accordingly. But I see that as sort of a separate issue from us going forward. What I look at when I see an organization such as UPD, Slovisa is a member of UPD because it's the payment arm for its members, but it is not on the governing board in terms of having separate representation. The members who receive services are the ones who sit on the board. I think that would be structured the same way going forward in terms of how we are structuring ourselves. Under the new interlocal, if you're receiving services, you're on the board. It doesn't say whether they're paid for by Slovisa or by member fees. So it's simply about receiving services and participating in governance. And that doesn't mean that Slovisa is not a member. It is. When we had Riverton and Harriman here, we added their funding districts to the membership by making them non-voting members because they're contracts. They're the ones paying us. But in terms of governance, in terms of actually receiving services, they were only members in terms of writing the checks to us. The cities were represented on the board and not the funding districts. It's really going to be the same thing going forward. If at some point members of Slovisa obtain their own taxing authority and have alternative funding mechanisms, or there's a change in how that's funded, that wouldn't change the membership in the UPD other than it may, if Slovisa is dissolved and everybody has their own taxing authority at some point in the future, they would still be the members, and just how they pay for that is up to them. But I hope that kind of explains it as in terms of what we're looking at as a structure. We do add funding mechanisms as members, but they're not voting because they're represented by the industry entities that are part of that funding mechanism. So if Mill Creek formed a law enforcement district, it would be added as a member of the UPD because it's paying us, but Mill Creek itself would still be the sole representative on the UPD board.
Harry, just, sorry, one follow-up. So on the departure piece, is your read on that the same? So for, as you're describing the sheriff or the townships leaving, is the way you're thinking about that the same for any other member coming or leaving? Like Sandy was mentioned at one point, say Sandy came and joined, a few years later they left. Is that still this departure by operation? I mean, is that how you're thinking of that? Would that also apply to other entities?
I'm not sure I understand the question there.
And I think it would only apply to the current entities.
Let me say that I think there is room for some discussion on that, and I would just caution Harry about what other former members of this organization think about those arguments too, so.
That's what I worry about, is that we're going to make a decision now that is going to impact us somewhere down the line. Because again, from my understanding, and any of the attorneys in this room can correct me, that there is a determination that really this legislation doesn't make us do anything, but we're following intent. And so if we're moving forward in this way, does that lock us in somewhere down the line that hurts us?
I think I would suggest that in terms of talking about legal theories like this, that we should get legal advice from our counsel in the closed session.
I make one comment. So you talked about the lease. So just know there is nobody kicking anybody out.
Yeah, and we're gonna work this out.
Yeah, we have to all work together. You know, I've heard that before, and it sounds like there's this rush to hurry up and find a place to go because you're getting kicked out. Nobody has said that. There's a future plan for this building. It could be 2 years, 3 years down the road, but nobody has said UPD 2.0 needs to find a place and get out at all. That has not occurred. I just want to make sure, because that can create problems too, and rush to decision making when you're finding a new location. You know, if you're going to rush to that decision without having all the information, but there is no discussion of July 1, UPD folks are out of this building. That's not accurate. If you're hearing that, it's not accurate.
Anything else, guys?
Oh, sorry.
All right, we'll move on to the Salt Lake County Law Enforcement Bureau update. Mr. Peterson.
For that, I probably should have brought my hydration pack up here. Ready for a long haul. I just want to start off and say how grateful I am that we have a couple new chiefs coming on board. You know, we have some really good interest from folks like in those positions on the Law Enforcement Bureau side. It was a humbling opportunity to see the quality of folks that really want to make this work. And that's how I took it, is that there are a lot of good people that just want to make this work and want to make the service work well, want to take care of our people. And the sheriff was kind enough to involve her executive staff, myself, and the chief deputies and the sheriff's office in part of that process for some of the interviews. Of course, the appointing decision is hers, but to her credit, she gives us input on her team, and we have discussions about that. And every individual that came in and interviewed with us would do a good job in coming to the sheriff's office and helping us build the bureau and get the operations going. That was a discussion that we had right off the bat when we were discussing all the candidates that came in and wanted to help with this project. Everybody did just a great job. And if you just blindly threw a dart at the board, you'd get good results. And it's just really impressive. And it says the most about UPD and the quality of people that UPD has. The commanders here were just amazing, and they are. So I just stand in awe, and I'm still in. I could go on and on. So I'll stop and just offer my gratitude to all those candidates that came in and wanted to pitch in and make things better and try to move this all forward with us. So And thanks to Chief Ackerman and new Chief Van Emmer. I'm really grateful that they're going to step up and help with this operations part. I'll mention that in just in a second and kind of the timeline stuff. If you think about what we're doing in the sheriff's office, kind of, we've been trying to, from a more of a planning stage, we've been discussing how we would roll this out and get folks involved. Not just from the sheriff's office side, where we're kind of building this new bureau, but also hopefully without impacting any operations on sheriff's office and UPD, but also some of the countywide positions in the UPD. Get them involved from like a project management standpoint and trying to lift this off. We've been kind of talking about different analogies about how to look at it. If you're looking at, we're building like an addition, like a home addition. I'm not a builder or contractor, so I may speak out of turn on this. We did plenty of Googling to make sure our definitions were right. It's pretty simple, but if you're kind of thinking about that we're building an addition on a home in the sheriff's office, we're reestablishing that law enforcement bureau over there. The last couple months since we've been really going in earnest, really June and July on this, we've been working on the architectural plans and securing financing. The architectural plans, if you kind of equate that to kind of what services will look like inside the sheriff's office, what we anticipate those will look like. I'm sure I probably should have counseled with Councilman Brandt on that, on our architectural plans and how we make that work best. Because we're really making sure that if we don't have that right, often if your arc plans aren't stable, the rest of it is going to be all scubumpus itself too. So we're trying to be really, really careful about building that. And in that stage, if you think about for the last 14 years, the law enforcement functions for the sheriff have been inside the UPD. And so this has been the governing policy board that has been managing those functions, as you well know. Right now is, and it's not frustrating, it's just time intensive. And there are a lot of moving parts when you lift up this component of law enforcement operations and drop it into another council, another governing body who is now going to direct it from a policy standpoint. And as we do that, we're finding that there, just as in this board, there are, incredible viewpoints, lots of talented folks with perspectives and lots of differing opinions, which is good for government operations. That's what we want on councils and governing boards. County council has just as much of that in spades. They have lots of strong opinions. They have lots of ideas about how things should go. We are very much in that education stage and really giving the opportunity for not just as the council as a whole, but working with each individual member and their staff and the mayor's office intensively to give them the opportunity to now be that governing council over these law enforcement services inside the sheriff's office. Of course, over the last several years, we've been trying to update them and keep them apprised and giving them updates close to the budget process where they approve a budget from the UPD on the county side, because there's always questions at the council. But now it really sits in their lap to make those decisions to guide the service. And as that has become real to many of those council members, if not all of them as we see it, not only is it like a new responsibility, but it's an exciting responsibility for some of them. We have a meeting with them 1 week with one council member, and then another week or two later, they have spoken to constituents or colleagues, and they want another meeting with us to talk about ideas and changes that they would like to see about services we've discussed with them the week or 2 weeks prior. As you can imagine, because it's a service that they are going to be spending millions of taxpayer dollars on, hopefully protect lives and bring peace to the community. I only bring that up because we're really, I know there's lots of discussion. I feel it. It is just part of our job to be the tip of the spear of pressure in law enforcement. That's just the deal. So I get it. But we definitely feel that there are a lot of folks who want numbers. The thing that we have committed to do is not provide bad numbers. We're not going to give people numbers that are 10% off. Here's your numbers on what a budget could be with a margin of give or take 6 or 7 or 8 or 10%. We want to provide the best possible numbers. If you look at agencies that left the UPD and separated Taylorsville, for example, if you look at their timeline when they started their department, hiring their consultant, getting their chief online, getting their services, outlining their operations plans, getting their strategic plan going. We're 4 or 5 months ahead of that right now. And I understand there are a lot of tax policy questions involved in this that were discussed just earlier, that we're trying to weave into this that make it extra complicated. So it's good we have that extra time. Of course, we're dealing with important services, and I'm not discounting that. That's why we talk about the importance of the services, not discontinuing or disrupting that service throughout this whole process. But please understand, it is not lost on us that people are looking for numbers. It is not lost on us that people want good budget numbers. It is also our top priority, but it doesn't trump the ability for us to go to our council members and make sure they're educated. It doesn't trump our ability to have good processes, to get good information from our administrative teams to provide us the information we need to provide those good numbers. And I don't want to stand on shaky ground when I go to anyone to be able to try to provide what would be a vision of a good contract price and the kind of service they would receive from that, to go back to them 2 weeks later and say, never mind. It's actually 5% more because we didn't account for this. The citizens deserve more than that. We desperately want to get it right. We feel definitely yoked in this task with you. We want to make sure it works. We definitely hear your concerns about, hey, why aren't we getting numbers? We feel that same thing. It's not that we're not working. I just hope you understand that. When I hear that, what feels to me, because again, being on the tip of that, and Chief Manager and I being project managers in this, we've talked about it. We both feel that really strongly of wanting to stand on firm ground. We are not looking for an excuse in it. Just please understand, we hear you and we are doing our best to try to get you the information we can as timely as we can. But we do see that it is going to be a methodical process. We do feel comfortable about our timelines right now. We do feel like we're moving in a direction where we're going to be able to provide good information to partners for them to be able to make good decisions for their fiscal years that are coming up. So we feel really confident about that. Some of the things that I mentioned that we're having policy discussions. We're working very closely with the mayor's office. Again, we're having weekly meetings almost multiple times with the mayor's office to really nail down budget. And one of the meetings that we're having this week with the mayor's office is specifically to look at, when we talk about the statutory and countywide services, as we bring them over, there are certain things that I'll use Canyon Patrol because it's pretty easy and universal for us to talk about. And pretty not very contested, right? Canyon Patrol on the east side, we traditionally have done that where we have a 4-hour window where we don't have coverage. We don't have 24-hour coverage there. Well, now that the county is going to be doing that coverage, essentially standing alone up there, we're looking at ways that we can provide that the best. I was the executive officer there 15 years ago. And we needed to level up to 24-hour coverage then. We made some presentations then. There wasn't a will, there wasn't a way to be able to do it. We hope there is now. We don't know how we can't go to 24-hour coverage, but that is a big price tag for us to do that. We also know that there are trails out in the Southwest that are opening just this week, a very large trail system, potentially to be the largest trail system in Salt Lake County. And it's going to be a huge draw. We know that Butterfield is opening up. We know that a lot of the call volume along the west side canyons is increasing. So we are looking at models and talking to council members to have area along there about increasing service out there. And so some of those discussions are organic and ongoing and breathing. And so to be able to discuss how the service is being provided now, and the exact differences, even down to FTE counts, and how that translates into how it will impact a county budget moving forward. Those are the translation of discussions we are having between operations and policymakers right now on the county side. And that probably, I'm sure that sounds like all is quiet on this front, but it's not on the county's front. It's not quiet. It's busy and active, and and intense in trying to see how we can figure out the best possible service for the citizens of Salt Lake County. And so I'm glad we have the opportunity to give updates on this. We are working with the council and the mayor's office to make sure that we can get this right. And those are the kinds of meetings we're having now, is giving those policymakers, just as you would want with your constituents and your responsibilities with your councils. They definitely want that with theirs and their new law enforcement bureau. And so we're doing our best to educate them and to provide that. And something I applaud the mayor's office is they want to understand the operations level. Not because, and I don't ever feel like it's because they don't trust us. It's because they have a hunger to know how it works. And the more people that understand how public safety works, the better public safety will be. And so we applaud that. So we're taking the time to continue to work through this. And nobody is holding it up. I would just call it government operations. Others may call it bureaucracy, right? But it really is government moving. It's government moving forward, and we're doing our best right now to do it. The good thing is, if I go back to my original metaphor of building a house, you've got folks who are securing the financing, which doesn't stop if you're building a house. It doesn't stop. You have people who are going to be working on that, payments all the way through. The architectural plans and making sure that those are being referred to and that they're being honed, and sometimes they change throughout the construction process. That will also continually be refined and worked on to make sure that it matches what is happening. And really, ultimately, the vision of the architect, our sheriff, is going to be outlining that. So that is also an iterative process that will continually happen. The great part is that now that we have a few operations folks, our operations chiefs, literally by title, their operations chiefs can come in and start working on some of the operations parts. Getting the rest of the crew and the ground ready to get going and building the operation. As does finance and the policy stuff is being taken care of simultaneously. We're getting this whole contract of building it going. I hope that analogy makes a little bit of sense. It's helped us to kind of figure things out on our side as we kind of think through this. We will be bringing on an office coordinator. I just want to point out, as we were presenting this to the county council a few weeks ago, it is just as critical that we have our support staff, our civilian staff that comes along and supports us in this. We would be dead in the water every bit as much as we'd be dead in the water without our chiefs. So we're really excited to get an office coordinator in the next couple of weeks. We specifically staggered that because we wanted our chiefs, who will be working primarily with that office coordinator, to be involved and to make that decision on an office coordinator in that area. So in the next few weeks, we'll be posting that, and we'll be bringing an office coordinator on. Some of the things that we've been doing, we've been having some briefing meetings with some of the command on the sheriff's side. Again, working on the whole house of building this addition, there's a whole other part of the house that we're working with on the sheriff's side. And we've been doing some education. Specifically last week, we had a few meetings where just to try to educate our commanders about, on the sheriff's side, statutory duties countywide, how some of those services will fit into some of the overall global services like the training unit and IA, technical services, things like that inside the sheriff's office, and really trying to ultimately get their good ideas, because we would be fools to think that we have them. It's really our commanders and those around us that can help us really make sure that we vet this out properly. That's one of the big steps that we're in right now. Again, making sure our architectural plans are spot on, and it's really where we should be. Our next steps is over the next, as has been mentioned, September and October is building our budget time. We've presented a few months ago at that step timeline that we had, and it's September, October is our budget time. That's where we start taking the personnel information and our architectural plans and overlaying that together. That is September, October, to be able to present budgets to our county council with the mayor's office, and to be able to get something past that. Hopefully that information will also be most useful for this group to be able to kind of see where we're going. We'll provide that with you simultaneously as we get that information available for the county council, and provide that publicly. I just have a few other things, but it's mostly redundant with other stuff. Are there any questions about what we're doing? Comments, questions?
I'd be curious on getting some insight into, since you're starting higher, of just what that process looks like for you on your end, either just the hiring process, recruitment process, and how the sheriff's office is going on that.
Like the hiring process for the rest of the bureau?
Yeah, just as you're getting started.
Oh, sure. So one of the main things, like if you look at this as an overall project, one of the main, like if you, from a planning standpoint, that one of the chiefs, if not both, of course, will all kind of be involved in it. But one of the projects that one of them will take on will be working with our HR department and working on hiring plans. So if you look at kind of a global level, hey, we have a hiring plan, but one of the hiring plans is to hire someone to work on that. Specifically, like we haven't dug down and specifically said, hey, here is what the pay will be, here is what the benefit packages will be, here is where assignments will be, here's how many we're gonna hire for deputy level or sergeant level. We're not at that stage yet. When we get that stage, we'll let you guys know.
So I appreciate the idea. This is an opportunity for both UPD and for the sheriff's department to kind of reimagine themselves. And I agree that there are probably deficiencies in the services that county has provided on a countywide basis or on, to areas within incorporated county and Canyon Patrol and or I guess mainly Canyon Patrol. But what I would caution, and this is speaking as a county taxpayer on the general fund side, this is a big challenge to separate these departments, and we know we're going to lose efficiencies. And I'm a little less sanguine about expanding the services that the sheriff provides in terms of expanding Canyon Patrol 24-hour service where we aren't doing that now, or how much we add to the West Side Canyon when we aren't doing that now, in the context of trying to separate the Siamese twin and lose efficiency. I know it's probably something that should be done. Maybe this is a good time to do it, but I also think I don't want to take too much air out of the balloon, but I think that there should be some conservatism with respect to, expanding the budget when we have so many unknowns about loss of efficiencies. So,
Good point.
Yeah.
Not to say they couldn't be built back in over time, but we're looking at that on precinct levels as too. There's gonna have to be some trimming to get this 2.0 off the ground, and I would hope the sheriff would have the same approach. We all made the commitment to do what's best for public safety. Not what's best for the sheriff, not what's best for the UPD, but public safety as a whole. And I get it, you're gonna build this thing as robust as possible, I get it, but keep in mind that you might be able to build those improvements over time, just like we're gonna have to do as a precinct.
Great perspective. Thank you.
So at the beginning of this meeting, you said there's 5 resignations. Did the 2 individuals going to sheriff's office that count in the 5, or is it
No.
7?
No. And some of the resignations are retirements, so, I guess the word would be, we have people leaving. But some of them are retirements. Not, is it like they're not just quitting? And then there's some that are, found other opportunities. In the private sector.
And I understand, so with the positions sheriff's office is opening, you're providing those opportunities to UPD officers, opening that up to them. Is there specific recruitment going on to UPD folks within that as well?
Like, what do you mean recruitment?
Are there
We just put a,
tactics going into to get certain folks to
No.
come?
No, we've committed to ensure that every UPD officer has an opportunity to continue working in either the sheriff's office or UPD 2.0. So what we have done is when we open up those announcements, we're given preference to UPD officers. So, the concern early on was, will we be able to fill all of our positions? Will UPD 2.0 be able to fill theirs? And that's where we're trying to work together on the best way to do that. And, you know, come the first of the year, we'll bring you some more information of bringing on some more people on early that will continue to have an impact. But we want to ensure that every UPD officer has an employee. That has been our goal from the beginning, and it will continue to be, even though it's tough. And these are tough changes in you know, that we're making. But at the end of the day, we don't want to end up with a bunch of UPD officers in limbo because they don't have any place to go. So they're all currently employed doing the service right now. They're doing statutory duties right now. They're doing countywide services right now. Those are the ones that, you know, you would hope would continue to provide that service. But if we can't hire enough, then, you know, we're doing announcements we would hire people from the outside too. So, but preferences to the UPD.
Several months into this since legislation, have you done the exercise to at least come up with a ballpark of personnel to do what you need to do on the sheriff's office side? Are we talking 40 people? Are we talking 100 people?
So we're
That's-
talking over 100 because right now that's what provides the service. We're
Yeah.
talking about the individuals that go over doing the service. It doesn't have to be the one doing it right now. That would probably be the best scenario, but it doesn't have to. Other people may want that opportunity. But the other piece is now that we're splitting our shared service, that's where we have to hire for shared services. UPD 2.0 has to hire for the same or continue to provide, you know, with who's ever employed that stays with UPD 2.0. But that's where the increase in manpower is trying to meet that efficiency that we're losing. And that's why we're open to taking a look at different services that we can help provide to other agencies, UPD 2.0 included, or if there's something that we can partner with. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
All right, on to the UPD reorganization discussion. I'm just gonna quickly just reiterate again that the cities or the townships, those meetings have been productive. We still have one more meeting to go, and we'd like to be able to bring some sort of update to our officers as soon as all of those are done. One thing that I want to say here that I would caution on is, you know, as Mayor Silvestrini said, we've asked the mayor's office to minimally mess with Slovisa funds. But I know that in many conversations I've been around, I don't want the townships to count on having that 40% long term. And if that's, and I think that's part of the reason that we're having these conversations is making sure that townships can stand on their own without that 40%. Because I think from the conversations I've been around, eventually that's going away. So I just want to emphasize that. But otherwise, I think we covered a lot today. I don't know that I have much more to add unless, but I would open up to you. Okay. Then we'll move on to the UPD check register explanation. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board member. Remember at the last board meeting, Councilman also raised a question about the July check registers, specifically the ones that were related to the medical providers and medical services. We had some questions on some individual payouts that were being made, and then also the overall $5 million, well, nearly $5 million expenses. We didn't have the specifics checks that he was referring to. We didn't want to give him inaccurate information. So we asked Councilman Olson to provide us that, and he did. So using that, we were able to do a more in-depth look at those checks and come up with a breakout of what all of those represented. Chief Ackerman will go over the medically related ones. I will address the ones for the individuals and also the remaining ones. If you look at the pie chart quickly there, the ones that were to the individuals, those were all related to travel and per diem. And you can see that that makes up like 0.2% of the overall payout there, but that's what most of those checks were when you look at the individual ones. And then we also had a breakout of what all of the other checks represented. So most of that, you can see the bulk of it is 61% of our related to payroll. Then we had 11.8% were related to either vehicle purchases or vehicle maintenance. Then we have contracts and licenses at 14%, the big one being Beck in there. But we have, we do have quite a few contracts that we have got, like the facility maintenances, like the janitorial services. We've also got risk management services that we pay for, interpretations, forensic software. So a lot of contracts that we've got that are related to that. And then we've got other miscellaneous ones. So that's what most of those checks were. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to call me if you want more specifics, because we did break those out. So with that, I'll turn the related ones over to.
There was an analysis done early on in UPD's existence. We do self-provide for our workers' compensation. We contract with county risk management to provide a lot of those services. They help negotiate the bills and things like that. But we do work in a profession that gets injured just to the sheer nature of it. And so it's not uncommon to have multiple workers' compensation injuries almost on a weekly basis. And that just kind of ebbs and flows depending on, the work assignments. But a lot of that, we do try to mitigate some of those expenses. We are continually, training our supervisors and our administrators to go to, Care Now or WorkMed, as opposed to going to the emergency room. That granted, that's not always the case, but we try to mitigate a lot of those costs that way. And then we work with risk management with the county to help negotiate those prices. Some of these, that's just looking through them, are injuries that have happened in some cases years ago, that we're still working with. When you're injured in the job, we are continuing to pay those. This is not uncommon for the types of bills that we're getting on a monthly basis, and all of those do come through. We are looking at those and reviewing those and getting approvals through risk management to make sure that that is the best price and that we've crossed all of our T's and dotted our I's. But that isn't uncommon, and that does make up about 1%, that workers' compensation piece of our monthly budget.
So this is going to be pretty much what makes up the bulk of our expenses each month. So we're more than happy to look at them more closely if you feel it's necessary. But we just wanted to do it this one time because the question was raised. But again, if you have any questions when you get those expenses or those check registered, you're more than welcome to call us and we can look at those.
I just want to, Dave, if you've got anything to add in, I just want to make sure if this answers your questions or not.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mayor. Really, I mean, just kind of like Jake said, this is simply just trying to understand and gather the information needed to be able to comprehend what goes in that. In no way was I ever questioning anybody's integrity or doubting any of the contents of this. It was simply just to gain education on, where the money is spent. That was really the whole purpose of asking these questions. I appreciate you guys answering them, and it's a lot clearer now. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, upcoming meetings, we've got the UPD Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, September 12th at 8 AM. And then our regular board meeting on September 21st at 9 AM. Are there any meetings not on here?
I'm gonna organize a meeting of the interlocals committee, but I'd like to do it after the finance committee meeting. And so we'll send out a poll on that. I mean, the 12th and the committee meeting, and the next board meeting, we have to try to pick a date.
All right, otherwise, we've just got approval of the August 2nd, 2023 UPD board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those?
I'll move to approve those.
We have a second. Motion. Thank you. We have a motion to a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Do we have any other business?
Mr. Chair, just very briefly, for the legislature kind of turned the apple cart upside down a little while ago. The sheriff had a long career before all this happened. And my wife served on the Assistance League of Salt Lake City Board for about 30 years, and they do a lot of great youth programs, which I won't go into here, but each year they do a big fundraising luncheon and event, and each year they reach out to the community and honor a woman of distinction. And this year's honoree is our own Sheriff Rivera. She will be honored on September 30th at the Cottonwood Country Club. There's a luncheon there. I believe Harmony, did you get that invitation? I think she's maybe forwarded that to the board. If anybody would like to receive that out in the staff and whatnot, I think the final sign up is September 18th, but it's September 30th at the Cottonwood Club. And they do this every year, but I just want to congratulate Sheriff Rivera on being honored this year as the Assistance League's Woman of Distinction. So.
Any other business? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Yes, sir, thank you.